So I got a 318 John Deere here, and it had this Onan in it. Now this is a Honda GX630, and it came as a kit from Repowerspecialists. Okay, now while I was removing the engine, I took some time to label some of the wiring and stuff, which isn't very hard to do. We cleaned everything up, cleaned those coolers out really well. Now you'll see all this stuff as we go along. Okay, you got the two coolers there, and they need air sucked across them at all times. And right here from the engine where it's getting it from. So if you notice, you'll see they had stuff on there from John Deere. You can either get something like this, weather strip adhesive, and make a circle around there so that it seals up against the engine, or this is what we decided to do. Now the next thing is, you got to put the hub in here to bolt the drive shaft through, and we are going to have to cut this screen out a little bit bigger, and we're going to have to take the screen off. So you got some little Phillips screws here. Now the hub's going to go on this way with that machine part there sticking out to you. 3 holes here are countersunk down in. That's what the cap screw fits down into when you put it on here. So I took a ruler and I measured several spots around here, and 2 7/8 seems to be it. Now there I traced around that, and I'm going to take some tin snips and try to cut this out. It's just plastic. Now there's this spacer plate here, and it shows you which way to go put it on. Okay, so we rolled the engine up on its back, and see here you got a carriage bolt. You got 4 carriage bolts they give you in the engine, 1 here and 1 back here. We went with this hole because if you use the back hole, the engine won't slide back far enough. Now the 2 bolts for here that goes in the frame, because of that housing, you have to have them in before you put the plate on. Now the next thing we're going to deal with, but we're going to try to put this hose they give you on there. Okay, so here's where we got the oiled line going. There's no ring on this fitting, because I believe on this one the hose is going to go right down kind of through here, and then I can tie it up to the front here somewhere, and it'll be easy access to changing oil. So right or wrong, we went ahead and put the drive shaft on. Okay, this is where I think I could see a person could use some help doing it the way I'm doing it with the drive shaft. That way we can guide that drive shaft back through there while we get the engine on. Okay, we got the engine setting down in there. The 2 front bolts here on the plate, we just kind of left them out until we got it down in there, and then put them in. That way we could kind of not get caught on this front lip. Now the one mistake we kind of made is this is thick. It's making it not want to let the engine go back quite far enough. Now I've got the 4 bolts out, of course, with the battery tray removed, and then this piece here fits in here. If you just take them 4 bolts out, that gives you a whole lot more room. There's 2 nuts on the bottom of the throttle. If you take them out and move it here, you'll be able to see what we're going to work on. Okay, that cable, if you can see the 2 ears sticking out, that cable just slides down, and then them 2 ears are bent in a little bit to hold it. Remember, there's 2 holes here. Remember which hole you was in. This one had a bolt in the middle, so I just took the bolt out. After I took the bolt out, that left me with this piece, and it was easier to work with. So basically like that, after I got it in there, I just kind of took the pliers on the end. Actually, before I put that back together, see right down there, that's the nut on the choke cable. A 9/16 stubby wrench is what I use just to spin that nut off. The choke cable just got a regular end on it, so I can just pull the choke cable out and cut the housing and push it back through. The throttle cable has this J-bend on the end of it. I really don't need, because it's only go into these and just clamp down. So what I'm going to have to do is cut it down also. And I got it all put together here, but I might have to take the nut and bolt back out again just so I can pull the cable out and cut the housing. I ran the cables around and marked where I thought I wanted them. This was at the edge of the clamp, and that was the extra I was giving myself. The throttle cable has a Z bend on the end, so you gotta nip it off. I use a Dremel tool, just my preference, so I don't get the burrs. And while you got the cable linkage apart up there, you can pull the cable back so you're not cutting this inner wire also. And then I just cut the cable with a Dremel. Same with the choke cable. Okay, now with the throttle lever on the dash all the way down to idle, I just put the cable in here, put it in here and tighten it down here and just tighten it down because this is already automatically going to be in the lowest position. The choke, see here, this is loose, it just slides through there. You want the choke pushed all the way in and this is naturally off. Then you want to snug these screws down. Now you don't want them so tight you break them off, but you want them tight enough that it'll grip the cable and not slip. Make sure when you're doing the cables you leave enough room. Remember the battery tray goes in here. I don't know if you can see this washer behind it has a little cutout and there's a tang right here. When you put it back together, make sure that goes over that. You don't want to just tighten it down and bend it. Another thing on the throttle control, that bolt and nut there, you can adjust the tension on that. And you want this to move just stiff enough that wherever you put it, it stays there and doesn't creak while you're mowing. But right now, I'm going to go back to, I got everything run through the firewall that's going to need to go, except for a negative battery terminal, and I will still be able to get that through. So my next thing is to try to get this engine back as far as I can and bolt it down. I'll show you why I need to get it all the way back as far as I can, and why you really don't need as much insulation. Yeah. Now see, here's the dry shaft and here's the yoke on there. And if you notice that fitting, see how close that is? It's everything but rubbing on the fitting. That was the only problem I had getting the dry shaft fished back through and putting on the splines, was I had to pick up just a little bit on the dry shaft to pick the motor up, and then it cleared that. But I need to go back a little farther. And if you look here, I think you can see on the splines here, I need to go back just a little farther because I still got clean splines there. You can kind of see. So, I think the issue is I got too much insulation around the hole there on the firewall, making the motor. Now on that oil line, I took the plug out of this side underneath the oil filter, and this elbow is already put into there, so you just screw it in there tight, and this is where it tightened up, pointing that way. So I had taken the hose off thinking it would be easier than trying to put that hose down through there and the dry shaft and everything all at one time. But then I couldn't get it, it's so close to the frame, I couldn't get it on there, get it started and turn it and tighten it right. So I had to loosen the motor up and pick it back up and put the hose on. So leave that hose on, don't do what I did. So I ran the hose down through there. It was just a little tight right there. I mean, it's not really on it hard, but I put some of the plastic wire loom stuff over it just to help protect it, and down through here, and that leaves this hang out here in the front. It's easy to follow. You got this one here, goes right to the positive side of the coil. That should be with the green wire on your new engine. This PTO come out of this here, and then the other wire is with the oil sending unit. And like I say, you can follow it and look right down there as the oil sending unit. So that's one way of knowing where these are going. So I'm going to squeeze these a little bit and get them out of here, and we're going to use this part of the plug. Okay, as far as wiring, this is the ones of the headlights, so we know nothing we got to do to it. The one here on the green wire coming in, it went to the voltage regulator. We don't need it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this plug here. One of these, I got them all labeled. I believe this one was for the PTO. This one up here went to the coil, and this one over here goes to the oil sending unit light, which is a tan wire. Now you can take a test light and ground it and turn the key on, and you should have power to this tan wire. You gotta have the battery in, of course. And then the one over here is a red wire on this one, but it needs to have power when you got the key on and on position and start position, but off when the key's off. And then the third wire will be for the PTO. So I'm going to use the brown plug off the engine and put some new terminals in it. So the only other wire we'll have is the purple wire here, violet, whatever you want to call it. And the purple wire goes to the small wire on the starter, which would be the blue one here. But the blue one will have to connect, the rest of them will all connect into the old other half of this plug. The other wire you have is this white wire here. It's got the big lug on it. Now this can either go to the positive terminal on the battery, or I think what we're going to do is put it right here onto where the hot wire on the starter goes. So I'll have this on here, and then I'll have my starter wire on there, and then that's where this will pick up its power. Now for the oil sending unit light wire, this white wire goes under. I just ran it underneath of the housing, brought it up on this side. It's in there free. It'll also go to this brown plug. It'll go to that tan wire. Now I got these terminals to put in there. These are the same kind that fits in the other side of this plastic plug. It's see how this has got the little slosh in it? You push that back in a little bit, and that's how you release it out of the plastic thing. This little nubbin on the side is what catches the plastic. You put the new ones in, you just pop them in. So we're going to do 3 of them wires this way. This is the oil sending unit. We're going to do the hot wire, which will go to the green wire, and the PTO wire, what we'll be putting in here. All the wires on the new engine will have a tag of some sort on them telling you what they go to. Start, 12 volt only in start. Okay, this is what kicks the solenoid in. That is not in the brown plug, but on this one is a violet wire coming out. So I just crimped it together here, because if you ever needed to remove it, you can simply pull the spade connector off of here. So all the wiring on this can be just, that plug and this can be just connected just by pulling the plugs apart, except for the 2 battery cables. They're bolted on. I ran the cable down underneath the fuel line, come down, made a loop, and come back up. And there's a bolt hole right here underneath the oil sending unit, and it was a 10 by 125. If you get a short bolt, dry run it with your fingers first to make sure it doesn't bottom out too soon. This bolt was the shortest one I could find, and I had to cut it off a little bit, because if I ran it in there by hand, it bottomed out with too much space to tighten up to the wire. And you don't want to tighten up a bolt and bottom it out and bust the housing or the engine block. Now on this thing right now, I have no wires connected to the engine, but we're going to turn the key on to just on, and with the test light hooked to the negative, if I touch here, I get power. You see that? Now this brown wire, tan wire, is the one that went to the oil lamp on the engine. To confirm that, if you go up to the dashboard and just pop the oil lamp bulb out and take the light bulb out, it'll end your power here with the key on. Okay, so that'll confirm that it's the same one going to your oil light up there on your dash. Next one to find is this one right here. Now this is the reddish pink wire on this tractor, and it went to the positive side of the coil because I looked on the engine, followed it back to the B terminal, and right here it is. So now that one has power with the key on. If I turn it to the start position, I still have power. Now this bottom wire here, the blue wire, should be for the PTO. When you have the switch on, remember you got to have something on the seat if your seat safety switch is hooked up. Don't get panicking if you don't have it. Make sure all the safety switches are correct. And there you have, when you turn the PTO switch on, you have power. And the purple wire goes to the small wire on the starter, which would be the blue one here. But the blue one will have to connect, the rest of them will all connect into the old other half of this plug. So there's a starter with the positive cable and this white wire on it. The PTO clutch, power comes in on one side and grounds on the other. The old engine had it grounded to a bolt on the front of it, but we got some extra nuts. I put an eyelet on the wire, so I'm going to ground it right to this motor mount bolt. We had a little plastic wire loom to that bottom bolt down here just to hold these wires back. So this wire will go to the headlights, and when I get it all done, I'll zip tie that, and that way when you're putting the side cover on, none of the wires should really be in your way. Now the fuel line, this is what came with it, the filter and this piece of hose. I just connected the old one on, I didn't do anything, just connected the old fuel line right on. And I think I might get some Velcro or something, some sticky Velcro or something, try to just make it so it hangs it back to the engine a little bit. Just so when you're putting the side covers on and stuff, nothing's in the way. The other thing is this charging control box. I'd seen another one of these conversions done, and they put it back here, but they're running a smaller battery, and we didn't have room for it. So I had to pull the wire back out, and we mounted it here, which will be fine. So down here is a little hole in the block. Takes a 6mm by 100 pitch thread. I put a ground wire from there and ground it to the mounting bolt, and I also took and ground it to the battery. That way we know we got another body ground too. Battery. Make sure you have a good battery. You got this new engine, a new charging system, you're starting life over. Don't ruin it by using an old junk battery, because if you have an old junk battery and you try to use it, you'll more than likely just burn up the charging system. Now the exhaust was pretty simple. You can just put them 4 bolts on there. Get them snug, but don't break them off. There's a bolt down here on the bottom they give you. I went ahead and put it in. Now with the hood on, you see it doesn't go all the way down. And the reason is we're hitting right here. So I hate to cut the hood, but where that mark is and that mark is up to that ledge, I'm just gonna cut that out and see what happens. I gave myself a little bit of room just for if anything moves. So there we got it all back together. Batteries in there secured down. I put some of that plastic sheathing over the headlight wire. Now the oil filler cap and the dipstick, we did have to notch out around there. I used a little Dremel tool to cut most of it to the rough shape. Then I used one of these carbide deburring tools to go in there and shape it. Now we also had to cut a little bit on the hood. It's fiberglass. Again, I just used a Dremel tool. It cuts real easy. Now on the exhaust, I just had to barely nip underneath of it. Just, probably can't even see it, but it's not touching. We can put the grill back in. New caps on the wet lines. Now the PTO clutch is new, and a lot of them I get new says to burnish them in or break them in, which what we did was let the engine run without the belt on there, and we just kept engaging and disengaging the clutch several times just to get it kind of broke in. You can do that if you want. If you don't, whatever.